we've been here before. Every time जो पाकिस्तान में क्राइसिस आया है वो लिंक टू जियोपॉलिटिकल इंस्टेबिलिटी है. जो टर्म शीट आई हुई है पड़ी हुई है IMF की, वो उसमें थोड़े से जियोपॉलिटिकल एलिमेंट्स भी हैं. ये काफ़ी इंपॉर्टेंट टाइम है दुनिया की हिस्ट्री में. इट्स वेरी सिमिलर टू दी 70s, अर्ली 70s, जब US डॉलर गोल्ड से डीलिंक हुआ था 71 में. तो उस वक्त भी अगर आपको याद है पाकिस्तान में वॉलेटिलिटी काफ़ी थी. डॉलर स्टार्ट गेटिंग स्ट्रॉन्गर. यहाँ पे टेंशन शुरू हो गई. आटे की कीमत ऊपर नीचे हो रही है, चीनी की कीमत. पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज स्टार्ट टेकिंग एडवांटेज ऑफ दैट. छोटी मोटी चीज़ें हो रही थी बट नॉट बिग. 2024 में 1000 रुपये डॉलर होगा. तो फिर तेल पर लीटर जो है वो 2000 रुपये का होगा. हमारे बिजनेस साइकिल 3 साल के होते हैं, राइट. तो वो आप ग्रो करते हैं, एनर्जी डिमांड ऊपर जाती है, अब ऑयल इम्पोर्ट बिल बढ़ता है, balanced trade, rupee devalues, market नीचे आ जाती है. This is, I mean, you can we had the Asian financial crisis where US was raising rates. ये exact scenario था. क्या हुआ था? अकाउंट फ्रीज हो गए, डॉलर डिवैल्यू हुआ पाकिस्तान में, आधे लोग तो छोड़ के भाग गए.
Assalamu alaikum everyone and welcome to another episode of How Does It Work, a podcast by Pro Pakistani. We've called back the guru of venture capital, Faisal Aftab. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Sir, let's start from where we ended a few months ago. हमारी conversation चल रही थी about what things to invest in Pakistan. One, I'd like to take you back to about those things, for example, the dollar or crypto and gold, anything that we can invest in. What should we invest in? साथ साथ ये है कि एक बहुत ज़्यादा केओटिक सिचुएशन. मैं आपसे अभी यही बात करता कि जिन लोगों ने कल डॉलर उठाया आज लॉस पे है. जिन लोगों ने आई हैव दिस फ्रेंड, ही हैज़ अ पेमेंट कमिंग इन. ही सोल्ड हाउस इन F8. तो ही इज टेलिंग मी मंडे को उसकी पेमेंट आनी है. कल उसको 4 करोड़ रुपए का लॉस था उस पेमेंट में. इट्स अ बिग पेमेंट ऑब्वियसली, इट्स बिग हाउस इन F8. आज उसको 2 करोड़ रुपए प्रॉफिट है. सैटरडे को क्या होगा, संडे को क्या. आई मीन D-Day इज गोइंग लाइक दिस, राइट. सो व्हाट इज गोइंग टू हैपन विद द डॉलर? लेट्स स्टार्ट विद दैट.
So देखिए, in my opinion, the dollar is at the tail end of its bull market. I mean, अगर आप US को देखें, डॉलर बेसिकली क्या है, स्ट्रेंथ उसकी. So जब US रेट्स ऊपर करता है तो वो डॉलर्स दुनिया से खींच रहा है वापस. मनी सप्लाई डॉलर की कम कर रहा है और लिक्विडिटी कंस्ट्रेंट क्रिएट कर रहा है. और वो प्राइमरली इससे कर रहा है बिकॉज टू मच मनी फ्लोटिंग अराउंड इज क्रिएटिंग इन्फ्लेशन. Just like in Pakistan, also we're printing, so inflation is at an all-time high, but we also have devaluation that kicks in. So now, as they were raising rates, the dollar kept on getting stronger, right? Now they're pausing rate hikes, but rates फिर भी 5% पे रहेंगे. So the dollar in a long-term horizon has effectively peaked out.
Okay.
But in a short-term horizon, it could do one more uptick. और वो उस वक्त होगा जब US एक्चुअली रिसेशन में जाएगा और जब फेड एक्चुअली कट करेगा रेट्स को. तो होता ही है कि जब वो कट करते हैं रेट्स को, इसका मतलब वो पैसे मार्केट में फेंक रहे हैं बिकॉज द सिस्टम इज कमिंग डाउन.
और फिर डॉलर नीचे जाएगा.
शुरू में नीचे जाता है यूजली. उसके कोई जैसे वो कट करते हैं उसके कोई 3 से 6 से 9 महीने. एक्चुअली द रेंज इज ऑल द वे फ्रॉम 6 months टू 18 months. उसके बाद एक्चुअली थिंग्स स्टार्ट टू ब्रेक. देव कट और चीज़ें शो अप करती हैं. दिस टाइम माई बी डिफरेंट. आई थिंक थोड़ा सा क्विकर होगा बिकॉज इतने रेट्स इतनी स्पीड से ऊपर किए हैं 5% पे कि जब वो कट करेंगे वो ग्रेजुअली कट करेंगे. और जब मार्केट्स को वहाँ पर रियलाइजेशन होगी ये 0 पे नहीं कट कर रहे, आहिस्ता आहिस्ता कट कर रहे हैं, तो फिर मार्केट्स जो हैं वो वहाँ पे रोल ओवर करेंगे इन माई ओपिनियन. सो आई डोंट थिंक द बॉटम ऑफ द मार्केट्स इज इन येट. रीटेस्ट द कोविड हाई, द प्री कोविड हाइज we're going to retest, which is S&P at about, and this is important because the world is benchmarked with the S&P and the dollar. So S&P around 3,000 to 3,300. And
can you explain to us what that means?
The S&P 500 is the index that basically measures the 500 of the most important companies in the US, right? Primarily dominated by the FAMs, the big tech companies also.
बिल्कुल.
तो वो एक benchmark है. तो उसके बेसिस पे वो रोल ओवर होगा.
ठीक है.
और सो एनीवे, सो टू कमिंग बैक टू द डॉलर, नेक्स्ट ईयर द डॉलर इज डेफिनेटली इन अ बेयर मार्केट, मीनिंग कि इट्स गोना गो डाउन. बट इस साल वॉलेटिलिटी रहेगी मार्केट में.
और ये चीज़ हाउ मच इज इट रिलेटेड टू पाकिस्तान? मिसाल के तौर पे अभी बात हो रही थी कि डॉलर सेटल होगा कहीं 330 पे. कोई लोग कह रहे थे 450 तक जा सकता है, शुड बी डिफॉल्ट. हाउ मच ऑफ आवर लोकल टर्मोइल इज गोइंग टू प्ले अ पार्ट इन इट्स वैल्यू?
So for Pakistan right now, local turmoil is playing a bigger part. there's a major concern. I would say कि जब last time we met, उस वक्त default risk जो थी वो maybe 20%, 10% थी. 80% I was in the camp कि we won't default. Right now it's a coin flip, just because it's 50-50. I personally do not believe we will default, and I can elaborate on the reasons why. It's more geopolitical. Pakistan is not like a company. जो term sheet आई हुई है पड़ी हुई है IMF की, वो उसमें थोड़े से जियोपॉलिटिकल एलिमेंट्स भी हैं. ये काफ़ी इंपॉर्टेंट टाइम है दुनिया की हिस्ट्री में. इट्स वेरी सिमिलर टू दी 70s, अर्ली 70s, जब US डॉलर गोल्ड से डीलिंक हुआ था 71 में. तो उस वक्त भी अगर आपको याद है पाकिस्तान में वॉलेटिलिटी काफ़ी थी. कुछ इसी तरह के सिनेरियोज थे. और ऑल्सो सिमिलर टू 1940s एंड 45, जब पोस्ट वर्ल्ड वॉर 2 पाउंड को डॉलर ने dethrone किया था. I'm not saying the dollar is getting dethroned, but whenever there is a challenge to the dollar, you see volatility, geopolitical volatility, which comes in the form of Ukraine in the world. That's the first element.
Do you think that will continue, wars like Ukraine?
We'll see next year what happens in the US presidential elections, but at least for the foreseeable future it'll continue. Maybe Xi Jinping moves in and does a deal between Zelensky and Putin. I personally am in the camp that I think this war is going to escalate a bit more, at least for the next year.
And this war is
years.
between Russia and the US. It's between China and the US. I mean, who is competing with the dollar?
It's basically the world is split in two. It has been gradually been splitting in two for the last 10 years. अब वो चीज़ें बाहर सामने आ रही हैं.
Factions जो हैं.
Factions आ रही हैं. उसमें जो reasons हैं, and I can't remember if we talked about this in the last podcast, but maybe I'll elaborate since we have more time. It's a fresh discussion. So देखें, अगर आप cycles देखें दुनिया के, right? So एक ज़माने में pound was the reserve currency. All throughout, at that time, the British Empire was all over the world, subcontinent. We were all
colonization,
colonial products of the ex-British colony. At least our systems, jo today, when the nation state was created. So eventually, all empires that basically they gain reserve status through hard work, productivity, and then people start to have confidence in their systems, their judicial systems, and uske basis pe people prefer to keep their currency in their reserves.
Right.
And even the pound was backed by gold at one time until they delinked it.
Yeah, and there's a perception that this currency will not go down, so it's better to back this one.
It preserves your purchasing power, right? Yeah. Gold में आपको याद है last time explain किया था कि मैं gold ला के रखता हूँ टेबल पे. अब मेरे पास बार है, मैंने आपसे कीनू खरीदना है, तो अब मैं उसको चिप करूँगा आपके सामने. तो it's easier to get a currency that holds its value.
Right.
That's a reserve currency.
Makes sense.
But reserve currency के साथ आपको it's a huge privilege to be a reserve currency, because unlike the rupee, where there's no demand outside our borders, so therefore when we print it, सारी inflation domestic आ जाती है, चीज़ें महंगी हो जाती हैं. जब आप reserve currency होते हैं, आप जब print भी करते हैं, तो आपको inflation gradually आती है. You can keep doing it. If you abuse it and you keep printing too much, then it comes home. But generally when you print it, वो inflation export हो जाती है, because कोई ना कोई dollar या pound लेने को तैयार हो जाता था. तो अभी वो ये challenges आते हैं दुनिया में. कोई भी चीज़ overnight तो नहीं जाती, but definitely the US dollar is being challenged. I wouldn't say the way it looks in the news is as if it's tomorrow. It's gradually being challenged. अब ये हो रहा है कि थोड़ी सी आंखें दिखा रहे हैं जो, because, and what's the reason for that, right? The reason is कि let's say कि for example China has attained, in my opinion, I don't even know why we call it an emerging market. It's attained effectively economic and technological parity with the US. इस वक्त हम इंफॉर्मेशन एज को एंटर कर चुके हैं. लास्ट टाइम जब पाउंड डिसरप्ट हुआ था 1940s में, तो वो प्राइमरली एक एग्रेरियन सोसाइटी थी विद लिमिटेड इंडस्ट्रियल elements. I mean, they were also an industrial powerhouse, but the US attained industrial supremacy, and then they, leveraging that, they basically toppled the pound and became the reserve currency. And obviously World War I and II had a role to play in that. Today, the industrial age is being disrupted by the fourth industrial revolution, or the technology age, जिसमें AI, ML is going to play a massive part. I mean, ये stages में हो रही थी, अब going forward data का play बहुत important हो जाएगा with AI. So ये जो सारी चीज़ें हो रही हैं, उससे basically China and US are at parity in all these elements right now. I won't get into the details. I'm not taking a side, because इधर भी गलतियाँ हैं काफ़ी, उधर भी गलतियाँ हैं काफ़ी. But दैट्स द दो हाथी लड़ रहे हैं उसकी जो बेसिकली आप कह लें कि एंड अभी ये वो फिजिकल वॉर नहीं है उसकी लाइक आप कह लें कि आपस में टसल हो रही है
Cold War of sorts.
उसके जो फॉल आउट है वो आपको यूक्रेन में नज़र आ रही है पाकिस्तान में नज़र आ रही है यू आर सीइंग इट इन especially geopolitically sensitive countries and then obviously we're transitioning from the nation state which remember is a product pretty much of the World War II phenomena. I mean Egypt में Pakistan
What is the nation state? Could you explain
nation
that?
state is what Pakistan is, right? It's a nation state is you have a constitution, you have a flag, you have a national anthem, and then you have.
So what's not a
military.
nation state? What's the opposite?
I mean, prior to that, you had monarchies and feudal fiefdoms, princely states, right? So वो agrarian उसमें ज़्यादा थे. Eventually, फिर आपकी वो जो powers थी, जो एक princely state में होती थी, with a raja or a king or a monarchy, they were then separated, and they became pillars of the system, right? So उसमें आप कह लें कि let's say if I dissect Pakistan, you have the military, the Supreme Court, the parliament, and then the monetary side, ये आपकी state bank, treasury. I mean these are important. वो पहले unified होते थे. तो ये चार separate हो गए उसमें और वो इसमें it's not like एक बादशाह ऊपर बैठा हुआ है, well hopefully not बैठा हुआ है यहाँ पे, लेकिन basically you have a structure in which the state itself it's built कि नीचे से लोग आ रहे हैं ऊपर and it's revolving and the people with the best interest of the state are sitting there. So
You think we'll move away from this?
I think we're morphing away from this. वो ये रहे कि as we're going towards more and more integrated networks through technology. When you go on Facebook, you're effectively you're in Pakistan through
but you're everywhere.
but then you're everywhere, right? So similarly, those patterns exist. अब regional zones आ जाएंगे. पहले तो पूरी दुनिया was a free thing for everyone. अब because पैसा involve हो रहा है, we're in the money digitizing. So lines draw हो रही हैं because अब वो जो सारी all empires are based on reserve currencies.
Right.
If the currencies are turning digital, and I'm not just referring to crypto, that's the protocol level. वहाँ पे it's a different investment, but usually that's hinting at what's happening in the system. तो वहाँ पे trade zones or economic zones such as Shanghai Cooperation Organization, BRICS, Middle East, North Africa, Pakistan. हमने सारों में हाथ डाला हुआ है. But I mean वो इसलिए because we don't know which side.
And which side do you think we will end up on? If you were, say, Prime Minister or whatever.
Not Prime Minister, but let's just say someone.
If you were the end all,
let's
of
say,
Pakistan, which side would you pick?
Let's say as an investor. Even though it's difficult, I mean, I'm a Pakistani. I'm an American Pakistani, but I'm Pakistani at heart, at the core. So, you want the best interest of Pakistan. But when you're looking from an investor perspective, you have to be neutral. So, usme the logical side I see is we're going towards the Middle East, North Africa and Pakistan zone called the MENAP zone. जहाँ पे अगर आप देखें how the things are changing, right? I mean, we were very much in the China camp. जहाँ पे Central Asian republics, China, Russia, Pakistan, pretty much SCO, Shanghai Cooperation Organization का combined with the CARs, जो Central Asian republics, हम उस type के zone में जा रहे थे. वो likely अब लग नहीं रहा. It looks like we're going towards.
But why is that?
North Africa? Because हमारा bailout कहाँ से आ रहा है, right? Bailout of the IMF terms required that effectively friendly countries or strategic partners have to put up capital in the tune of $6 to $9 billion, and it's actually going to be a lot more in the long term. तो वो more than likely हम कहाँ जाते हैं? Gulf states, right? Saudi, UAE, China. If you notice कि UAE, China and Saudis are also getting closer. That doesn't mean that they're going entirely in the Chinese camp, but थोड़ा सा एक structure change हो रहा है दुनिया का. So historically, if you recall, Pakistan जो था, we used to pivot. We're a US ally. We've been a strong US ally
for many years
because of structural reasons. Most of our military supply lines, our commerce, which is still primarily exports over the Europe and the US. So you have dependencies and therefore you have alliances. And then India at that time was allied to the Soviet Union. So therefore our importance was very significant. वो थोड़ी सी चीज़ें change हो रही हैं because India has become the comprehensive strategic partner of the US
in this region.
Because they're worried about China. So वो counter करने के लिए India को fortify कर रहे हैं. तो उसमें India obviously doesn't get along with Pakistan. So if you notice, there's no US president that has come to Pakistan. I think apart from maybe 3 hours Obama. I can't even remember. Bush आया था उसके बाद फिर
It's been a while,
Obama came
yeah.
for maybe 3 hours or something. So that's a bit of a sign where they publicly slightly have to distance from Pakistan, even though for them Pakistan is a very, very important ally. They can't entirely pull back from Pakistan. But जब आप किसी और से partnership करते हैं, तो you have to keep their interests in mind as well.
Of course.
So now for us, the natural fall was to go towards China, which is what we did. If you look at the JF-17 fighter, so let's go from technology point of view, right? The tanks, जो आपकी heavy metals factory है Taxila में, all these things were shifting gradually. So हम basically 45% supply lines military की China की तरफ चले गए. अभी भी bulk, because it takes a long time to go from one technology onto another. And India का reverse है. They used to be entirely Soviet technology.
Right.
Now they're sitting at 45% Russian technology, and majority 60 European and American, and another mix, which they're gradually taking towards that side.
Of course. Yeah.
अब ये important इसलिए because military technology and actual technology are merging. अब ये नहीं है कि वो आपके सिर्फ weapons जो हैं वो सिर्फ वैसे ही चल रहे हैं, उसमें आप bullets load करें. A lot of these things are smart, so they're firmwares. Those firmwares can be programmed differently. So, if someone is an ally of, let's say, US technology, your guns may not fire on that ally if they turn into your opponent. So you become intrinsically tied
with each other
relationships. So it's a long-winded explanation, but मैं थोड़ा सा एक feel दे रहा हूँ why the world is changing. Right?
Achha, I have a question. We were talking about currencies, and that's how we sort of got into this conversation. And what I've never maybe been able to understand, and you can help me with this, is that so China is undoubtedly a superpower, right? Or at least on its way to becoming one.
Yeah, I think it is.
It is. So,
I mean, if I look at the world, it's like China and versus the US.
Yeah,
और बाकी सारे alliances.
Alliances banana. So the big dogs are China and the US. Why doesn't China want its currency to be as strong as the dollar? Or why isn't it? RMB, the yuan, why doesn't it rise?
Trust. Gradually trust attain करते हैं ना. So I'll give you an example. So you're hearing a lot of talks of China and trade settlement in the renminbi, right? Little bit, not too much. China, to become a reserve currency, it wants to reduce its dollar exposure. वो भी तो dollars ही ले रहे थे अपने products को export करके, and for their imports of oil. They're now trying to assert themselves and say, okay, look, we want to bring the renminbi in the trade. So either they're doing currency swaps, जहाँ पे कोई float नहीं है, तो आपने basically, let's say कि $10 billion की आपकी इधर से पाकिस्तान sends to China, which we don't, but I'm hypothetically saying 10 billion हम भेजते हैं उनको, 10 billion वो हमें भेजते हैं. तो versus having to go to an intermediary currency, यहाँ पे रुपये है, वहाँ पे renminbi है. अभी we have to go through the SWIFT system, जहाँ पे you have to convert to dollars, pound, euro, yen. ये चार ही available थी, but पाकिस्तान में primarily dollar ही है. तो वो फ्लोट मिल जाता है दूसरी करेंसी को, और उसमें डिवैल्यूएशन हो रही होती है. लेकिन अगर हमारी गुड्स हैं, फॉर एग्जांपल आटा और चावल, और वो हमें भेज रहे हैं, लेट्स से इलेक्ट्रॉनिक्स, तो वो एक इवन स्वैप है. तो अब जब करेंसी स्वैप करते हैं तो इंस्टेबिलिटी आपकी, अनलेस वो बैलेंस ऑफ हो, 10 बिलियन ना मैच हो रहा हो, वो प्रोटेक्ट करता है आपको थोड़ा बहुत. तो एक तो वो एलिमेंट है, वो दे बीन डूइंग दिस इन फैक्ट फॉर द लास्ट डेकेड. लेकिन अब वो ओवर्टली आ रहे हैं एंड दे आर सेइंग कि लुक, सेटल्ड इन renminbi. But what are they doing in the renminbi? Since nobody trusts the renminbi yet, so actually they did something. They've been doing it for the last 10 years. So China has been accumulating gold for the last 30 years. They're the largest producer of gold. They have not exported gold. They've been actually bringing in gold from outside operations. This is all to stabilize their currency. Because you, again, value की बात है ना, कि you're worried कि manipulate करते हैं, तो if I store it in my reserves, it might lose value. So now they set up the Shanghai Gold Exchange in 2018. The significance of that is इस वक्त गोल्ड की जो प्राइस है, it's determined from the London Bullion Exchange. वहाँ पे the main issue ये है कि basically when gold के against, gold is actually the anti-currency. So currency devaluation should be captured there. But वहाँ पे price manipulate होती है. When I say manipulate, I mean there's been lots of investigations and things on this. But if I'm taking, if let's say कि gold rising is basically showing the pound and the dollar. Remember the exercise we did? I showed you how the dollar was devaluing and all currencies are devaluing against gold.
Over the years, yeah.
If I just print dollars or pounds and I short जो मार्केट्स में होता है कि फॉरवर्ड फ्यूचर्स मार्केट होती है, वहाँ पे आप जाके अगर शॉर्ट करके आर्टिफिशली प्राइस गिरा दें गोल्ड की, तो वो प्राइस जो है वो प्राइस डिस्कवरी एक्चुअल मार्केट की नहीं है। तो चाइना ने किया ये कि उन्होंने अपनी शंघाई गोल्ड एक्सचेंज सेटअप की, जहाँ पे एक प्राइस होती है और वो एक्चुअल फिजिकल सेटलमेंट पे है वर्सेस पेपर सेटलमेंट पे। उसका मकसद ये था कि अब वो जो कर रहे हैं इन 2023, इफ़ दे गो टू लेट्स से द गल्फ स्टेट्स एंड दे बाइंग ऑयल फ्रॉम देम, they're saying कि look we want to pay in renminbi, but they don't actually pay in renminbi, it's called the energy bond।
ठीक है,
वो उनको एनर्जी बॉन्ड करते हैं, पे करते हैं, वहाँ से द गल्फ स्टेट्स लेट्स से take that energy bond, and that is convertible the next day to gold if you don't want to hold on to anything, you don't want a renminbi exposure। So this is a very significant change दुनिया में। उसके fractures जो है आपको नज़र आ रहे हैं,
and it's basically getting the rest of the world used to a
trusting
new way.
it।
Yeah, or
It's no currency in the history of the world has become a reserve currency without
Overnight.
gaining trust। So you first is you do hard work, but then you have to go to a gold standard or a asset backed standard, hard asset backed standard।
ताकि उनको पता होगा इसकी वैल्यू नहीं डिवैल्यू होगी over time। अच्छा, you mentioned about this new sort of world power, right? Or new axis of different allies and alignments. Exactly. So I was thinking, and we were talking about this off air as well, कि अब जिस तरह ये podcast है and YouTube is down these days पाकिस्तान में, so we don't know if we should upload or shouldn't upload, and obviously social media plays a part in pro-Pakistani, plays a part in many businesses, and I think to myself कि what happens if they continue around these lines, right? So what happens if our government say कि यार no social media that's not regulated by us, right? China has done it. So I lived in China in 2012, and it was very common. वहाँ पे ना Facebook था ना YouTube, it was a different world, right? That will obviously majorly impact businesses. You guys had a sort of statement out earlier as well that I saw today.
all the VC funds।
All the VC funds, yeah. और फर्स्टली तो ऑफ कोर्स इट्स इम्पैक्टिंग बिजनेसेस राइट नाउ सिग्निफिकेंटली, राइट? जिस तरह मैं आपको बताया हमारी बिजनेस भी इम्पैक्ट हो रही है, लेकिन फूड पैंडा पे फॉर एग्जांपल ओनली दोज हु कैन, या पैंडा मार्ट आप एग्जांपल दे रहे थे, वो चल रहा है लेकिन ये नहीं चल रहा।
फूड पैंडा नहीं चल रहा, पैंडा मार्ट इसलिए चल रहा है बिकॉज उनके वेयर हाउसेज होते हैं, डार्क स्टोर्स, वहाँ पे राइडर्स बाहर खड़े होते हैं, तो वो लैंडलाइन से वो यानी कि जो आपकी योर नायाटेल इक्विवेलेंट और PTCL, वहाँ से देर कनेक्टेड, वो तो नहीं ऑफ हो ना, 4G ऑफ बिल्कुल है, तो दे कैन रिसीव योर ऑर्डर एंड देन बेसिकली द राइडर कैन देन जस्ट गो एंड डिलीवर। बट जो फूड पैंडा वाली साइड है, वहाँ पे राइडर्स फिर रहे होते हैं, तो दे नीड 4G कनेक्टिविटी to connect to them, go to this restaurant। बिल्कुल। So that just, and same thing with Baikia and Kareem
and a lot of people, right? Kareem नहीं चल रही, driver नहीं चल रहा, that's all fine, and there is an expectation that obviously this is not going to continue, and at some point they're going to turn the internet back on, but
they will, in my opinion, not more than, I mean, if you and I'll give you the other scenario because that's a much darker scenario। Let's always look back at history because basically cycles rhyme, they don't repeat but they rhyme। 2007 General Musharraf was facing instability at that time, then we basically had a ban on electronic media, right? That didn't last, eventually it was lifted। So it was the same, it was lots of information, there was an information war going on, so that happened and basically eventually will lift ho gaya। And if you look at today, there's also concerns, right? It's let's be apolitical, let's not take a political side, let's be objective। You've got one side that wants elections, you have another side that is saying it's not the right time, or same day elections, whatever. The point is there's an information war going on। There's one side is leveraging the YouTube channels, the other side is leveraging electronic media,
traditional media,
social media versus electronic media, right? तो वहाँ पे अब दो separate opinions बन गए, and frankly everyone is confused what the actual information is, right? So this is an information war। तो वहाँ पे अब you've got a scenario where things are heating up and it's coming to a final logical conclusion, whatever that may be। But when things get to the Supreme Court and all, it's even in Bush versus Gore, you're at the final stages of it। So मैं Bush versus Gore US की बात कर रहा हूँ,
of course
2000 वाले elections हुए थे। तो now you know this you basically have one side that when the arrest happened, people started burning down state buildings। It's, I mean, whatever it is, I mean, there has to be sanctity of the state, right?
Of course।
तो उसके लिए उन्होंने टेम्परली उसको बिल्कुल वहाँ से ग्रुपिंग दिस इज़ वेरी नॉर्मल आई मीन दिस इज SOP कि आप कम्युनिकेशन लाइन जो है उनको डाउन करते हैं बिकॉज यू डोंट वांट पीपल टू रैंडमली गेट टुगेदर नेबरहुड्स एंड स्टार्ट सेटिंग थिंग्स ऑन फायर बाय द वे आई थिंक इवन हुआ था ड्यूरिंग व्हेन मोहतरमा बेनज़ीर भुट्टो शहीद
Yes, they jammed the internet.
they would turn it off because वहाँ पे लोग
Clusters
were
बंद थे।
frustrated they were coming
Exactly,
out and
exactly.
protesting and burning things तो वो shut off किया था
लेकिन मेरा क्वेश्चन ये है कि इमेजिन फॉर सेकंड वो तो आई मीन इफ दे शट डाउन 4G 3G ये तो इम्पॉसिबल नहीं लेकिन दैट्स अ रियली डूम्सडे सिनेरियो लेकिन मैं तो
I think it's short term I mean 2 दिन
नहीं मेरा
दो
सवाल
हफ्ते
अलग है व्हाट इफ दे से और व्हाट इफ एज अ गवर्नमेंट वी डिसाइड पाकिस्तान like some of its neighboring states are doing now will only have social media if it's regulated by the government, i.e. Facebook comes and sets up an office, right? Like China, right? And उसमें होता
they,
क्या
they call it the Great Firewall
the Great Firewall, right? That is the perfect explanation for it because they want to control that element of things. And अगर आप geopolitical बात करें future में, अगर let's say we're allies with China or allies with the Middle East, and they are not allies with the US, they will not want कि we are on socials that are not in fact owned by their regional powers, right? So it becomes a problem, right? So if Twitter is owned by the United States of America, they control the narrative. Not to say that they control the narrative for Pakistan right now, but they could if they wanted to.
So I'll tell you उसमें थोड़े issues हैं उसमें indigenous technology के issues हैं again China has attained technology parity.
Right.
We have a lot of good tech resources, but हमने कोई ख़ास platforms ही बनाए internal use के लिए,
बिल्कुल
right?
कभी नहीं बनाया
तो अगर आप उसको close off करते हैं तो you'll actually be taking like a step back in 10 years in Pakistan's own development, especially when the world is about to go straight up into the digital age और हम उस rocket
kind of like what
सवारी कर
Afghanistan
रहे
is
हैं.
doing right now, right? Yeah.
And so we would take. I don't think that scenario is possible, but let's assume it is, right? Now how would I execute it? If let's say,
It was your
let's say it's in the national interest. You know what? We're going to just wall this off. Okay. अब आप चाइना के पास जाएंगे आप कहेंगे उनसे कि हमें प्लेटफॉर्म्स अपने दे दें बाइडू दे दें
TikTok दे दें whatever.
टिकटॉक दे दें जो भी है यार आई मीन व्हाट लैंग्वेज आर वी मिक्सिंग राइट नाउ इंग्लिश एंड उर्दू आई डोंट थिंक मोस्ट पीपल हियर नो मैंड्रिन तो पहले तो वो एक हर्डल है राइट उसको फिर ला के आपने एक्लिमेट करना है लोकल एनवायरनमेंट के लिए तो वो अडॉप्शन जो है उसकी और जो सारी रीटूलिंग है वो बहुत टाइम लगेगा तो हम एटलीस्ट द करंट 10-year अगले 10 साल की जनरेशन जो आ रही हैं दैट आर कमिंग ऑनलाइन they are very anglicized in their way of thinking. We're more comfortable on Facebook, Google. So I don't think that scenario exists. If it does, it's a major reset. Then you're going towards a Myanmar or like a North Korea type setup, right? Which is a closed off scenario.
Which is
I don't see that happening.
unlikely.
Pakistan is too vibrant of a place.
Yeah, and it's too. It's in geopolitically, it's going to be very hard to be completely closed
मैंने आपको
off.
कहा कि हम ज़्यादा मीनाप की तरफ जा रहे हैं तो वहाँ पे ज़्यादा अगर सोशल मीडिया प्लेटफॉर्म आया भी उनके भी अरबिक एंड इंग्लिश के मिक्सेस हैं तो these cultural things play in user behavior and adoption.
अच्छा मुझे मीनाप
एक आपको इंडिया का बता देता हूँ इंडिया ने if you're saying कि okay what is every country demanding they're saying Europe has done this India has done this they're saying look if you want access to our market you have to follow the rules of the land right so I'll give you an example Pemra I don't I'm again not taking sides मैं सिर्फ आपको वैसे एक स्टेट की स्ट्रक्चर बता रहा हूँ अब पेमरा का ये क्या जो भी हमारी एक बिलीफ्स हैं और whatever let's
Ideologies,
not put stuff on TV that violates those particular things right? It's a regulatory body but Netflix doesn't come under Pemra but other platforms
बिल्कुल जिस तरह सिनेमाज में स्क्रीनिंग होती है whereas Netflix पे नहीं होती हाँ
so now all these things have to social media to some extent they're trying to get there. India ne karwa liya. I mean, if India you post something, the Indian government can remove it if you let's say post something about Kashmir, right? They have that.
But they have that sway with Facebook as well, right? I mean, हमारी क्या sway है?
We are 250 million people or users, right? So these countries are the demographics in Western economies are shrinking, and once you go start trading on the stock exchange, you need to have show growth, right? Enter new markets. No one's going to forgo the 5th most populous country. We have a lot of actual power. What we lack is the recognition of that power and the self-respect to go and demand it. वो obviously बहुत सी चीज़ों से आती है, like आपकी strong मईशत होनी चाहिए. It's a, so I won't get into that, but eventually my belief is we'll get there. but that is a potential outcome where look, agar ye band rehti hain, Facebook and these guys will also come to the table and have a discussion. I don't think that's the objective here, but
अच्छा, tell me a bit about the VC space. आपने MENAP की बात की अभी, and that's where we're sort of headed. Are you now looking at building funds more along what you think is going to be our geopolitical sort of alliances? And also, हमारी startups, last time I was here, the question was, are they dead? Or could they die? And you, but I rightfully mentioned about how 2023 would be tough, and then we would see it 2024 mein a growth coming. So far spot on with the prediction. But did you imagine it to be this bad, or did you think it's worse than what you imagined it to be?
So what I imagined, that's playing out. But there's the thought process in your brain. वो तो मैं आपको 10 साल की predictions करके दे सकता हूँ, like obviously speculatively. I mean, nobody knows the future. But when you're going through it yourself, so that's definitely weighed in on me, like going through it yourself, and not just like the startup scene. I mean, we're actually having to work harder with each company to make sure that the plans are in place and they're sustainable. So like if you were having meetings once a month, sometimes you're doing it more frequently now, right? But the overall macro situation in Pakistan, that actually has even exceeded my expectations of how bad it was going to get. So it's actually gone for the worst side, because I didn't think this impasse was going to last, the political stalemate was going to last this long. And then the IMF dragging the term sheet, right? It's just a term sheet, like just VC देती है, वो drag कर रहे हैं, वो terms आ रही हैं. And they're also in the right spot, because they're saying, look, this time we're not going to bail you out unless you agree to the structural reforms. ये नहीं हो सकता कि हमने आपको जैसे पैसे दिए, अगले दिन आपने तेल को 50% डिस्काउंट पे दे दिया,
हाँ, जो आपको दिल चाहे कर दिया.
I mean, it from a awam's point of view, it sounds great, but people have to realize कि वो आपसे ही फ्यूचर में चोरी हो रही है.
Of course, they're just doing it to win an election. के वो जी देखो कितना सस्ता कर दिया.
तेल को आप कर दें अभी 50% पे आप कट कर दें, आप चलें 100 रुपए का कर दें, 2024 में 1000 रुपए का डॉलर होगा, तो फिर आप फिर दोबारा चीखेंगे, फिर तेल पर लीटर जो है वो 2000 रुपए का होगा.
So tell me, what should these startups do? एक तो there's the well funded ones, वो तो भी एक जो आपके पास भी आपके पोर्टफोलियो में है. What should they do? क्योंकि अब on the horizon, I think you posted something on LinkedIn that I saw where Q1 of this year was the worst in terms of funding raised compared to the few years before, and it's seemingly investor confidence आने के लिए पहले तो एक political stability चाहिए ना, of sorts, and we don't know, that could be October, that could be longer. What do these companies do in that short term period that have funding? जिनके पास नहीं है वो उन पे आते हैं, लेकिन जिनके पास है वो क्या करें?
I mean, you move towards proving your actual. Ultimately, you have to build a business, right? And unless you're a network effect company, like trying to be a social media platform or such. If most of these are actual businesses, so you no longer have the pressure to raise constantly. वो भी तो एक बन गई थी चीज़ कि whoever's raising more
is winning more
and kept on getting more funding, right? So now actually I would say कि this is a time for those that have funding, and this is what the advice we've been giving them, is to actually discover your business and focus on profitability. I mean, a lot of the companies in my portfolio have actually figured out profitability.
Okay.
I mean, they were always unit economic positive. ये नहीं था कि 1 रुपए की चीज़ जो हम 20 सेंट पे बेच के रेवेन्यू दिखा रहे हैं, वो तो बेसलाइन लॉजिक की रिक्वायरमेंट होती है. And companies in Pakistan were doing it, they no longer exist. So that's worldwide. Nobody with any brain would invest in a negative unit economic company. Unless you're expecting capital like Silicon Valley कि हर हफ्ते आता जाएगा for the next 10 years.
And then you can somehow justify it later or something.
That's just not possible in Pakistan. हमारे business cycle 3 साल के होते हैं, right? तो वो आप grow करते हैं, energy demand ऊपर जाती है, अब oil import bill बढ़ता है, balanced trade, rupee devalues, market नीचे आ जाती है. This is, I mean, you can track Pakistan short. So you have to be in Pakistan, understanding the local economic cycles, not like Silicon Valley. So from that perspective, that's a whole different, that's just bad investment. That's a bad investment strategy or outlook. Now, for the companies that have raised money, use this time to turn profitable. You don't need to spend, $1 million a month and burn money to acquire customers just to show growth. You can now actually just simply go in आपकी जो रेवेन्यू है उसको ऑर्गेनिकली ग्रो करने दें, थोड़ी बहुत मार्केटिंग करें. यू डोंट नीड टू ग्रो 500% इन 6 months. ग्रो 5 to 10% मंथ ऑन मंथ. वो तो वैसे ही इसमें हो रहा है टेक में. इट्स हर जो बंदा रेगुलर इकोनॉमी की छोड़ के ऑनलाइन आता है,
ग्रोथ एक्सपीरियंस करें.
यहाँ पे वो छोटी सी इकॉनमी वो बड़ी हो रही है. इस 1% पेनिट्रेशन है टेक की. अगर आप ई कॉमर्स और सारी चीज़ों को देखें, मे बी excluding easy पैसा, Jazz Cash, they're at a slightly higher content, but let's say we're at 1%. 10 years from now, this is going to be not 10%, it'll probably be 20 to 25%. It's a huge leapfrog in growth.
Of course.
Right? So all you have to do is hold the fort.
And stay in the game.
Stay in the game. और इस बार by the way जो venture capitalists भी आ रहे होंगे ना, हमारा एक थोड़ा सा गोरा कॉम्प्लेक्स है. We just assume कि बाहर से कोई आया है तो they're all intelligent. वहाँ भी bubbles बनते हैं. 2008 housing crisis, 2008 ये आपके जो CDOs थे. They also go in a frenzy. They're also human beings, right? That's market behavior.
And they make mistakes too.
So वो 2021 में वो सारे आके पंप कर रहे थे. हम सारे भी जंप करके बैंडवैगन पे, यार this is great. I actually believe कि थोड़ा सा लंबा चलेगा, and I'll tell you why. Because March 2021 में Federal Reserve ने कहा था कि we don't see cutting rates till the end of 2023. Raising rates.
Yeah.
Then they did a switch in October. Because जब उनकी अपनी inflation आई तो उन्होंने कहा यार ये क्या हो गया है, right?
So then they changed their mind.
Then Jerome Powell actually said it in the October उनकी जो FOMC meeting होती है, which is like our policy rate meeting of the state bank. He said कि inflation is our primary concern. We will be raising rates. And they did that in March, right? That's the time when a lot of the founders, I started calling them in December. I said, by game over. Trust
I
me
remember
on this
you
one.
even told me that
Raise what you can and then don't burn it. Build a runway for 18 to 24 months. ये लंबा cycle है.
And what do you see happening in 18 to 24 months? I mean, are you still hopeful? अब तो आप खैर थोड़े हमारी तरह भी फंस गए. Now you're in it, in this chaos that is our country. लेकिन do you see this tech bubble as an inevitability still, regardless of geopolitical, whatever, political instability?
Look, we've been here before. Every time जो पाकिस्तान में crisis आया है, वो linked to geopolitical instability है. It is not, we're a transit route country. Countries like Pakistan, Ukraine, Georgia, Syria, these are countries जहाँ पे trade एक साइड पे है और consumption दूसरी साइड पे है. हम खुद भी consume करते हैं लेकिन हमारी location important है, right? I know that's beaten to death, but it's also the curse of a transit route country. कि आपको एक power या दूसरी power unstable रखती है कि यार ये connect ना कर जाए आपस में दो. Let's say Iran connecting with China over land. But actually, let me explain why that's important. देखिए, US has naval superiority. All empires in the history of the world, the Portuguese, the British Empire,
they had a naval superiority.
They dominate the waters, right? So उनकी अगर आप देखें तो उनका हमारा like 10 cores हैं, like जो different parts of Pakistan पे. उनकी अगर आप देखें तो Pacific Com, Atlantic Com, right? So पूरे globe में that's what a superpower is.
Stature, yeah.
And so you have to keep that in mind. Okay. So obviously अगर ईरान suddenly चाइना के साथ ऑयल बेचना शुरू हो जाता है renminbi में, तो that impacts their like dominance. So then a country like Pakistan could feel the pressure of that. Or same thing as Ukraine. Ukraine क्या है? Russia की कुछ pipelines वहाँ से जाती थी जब वो 2014 में था. उन्होंने फिर alternate बनाई Nord Stream. वो भी फट गई somehow. But this is all a trade war and transit route wars. So उसमें for Pakistan, that is a curse, but at the same time things also get rectified relatively quickly. So let's go to 1998.
ठीक है.
We had the Asian financial crisis where US was raising rates. ये exact scenario था. क्या हुआ था? अकाउंट फ्रीज हो गए, डॉलर डिवैल्यू हुआ पाकिस्तान में. आधे लोग तो छोड़ के भाग गए. वो बेचारे मिसिसागा कनाडा में रह रहे हैं. जो बिजनेस वो छोड़ गए, those guys have turned into like big businessmen today, like billionaires, right? So and why did that happen? Because bottom of the market में जब आप चीज़ें बेचते हैं, you are the distressed seller. You don't get the value for it. Others pick it up that are smarter. And then क्या हुआ था? Pump देखिए 1998 के बाद. You had a pump of like a 1500% from 1998 all the way to 2007.
Yeah.
And क्या हुआ? 2007 में global financial crisis आया. Political instability in Pakistan. Same thing. उस वक्त अगर lawyers movement हो रही थी, General Musharraf's government was unstable.
Chief Justice and all that.
Chief Justice. Yeah. You had an assassination of a prominent leader. Yeah. It looked like it was the end of. It was actually the same feeling as today.
कि बस खत्म हो गया, मर गए.
लड़ाइयाँ हो रही हैं streets पे. And then वहाँ पे अगर 2008 में आपने एसेट्स खरीदे होते यहाँ पे सस्ते, तो जो पंप आया है वो
You would have made killing.
2016 तक वो पंप आया है। और ये पॉलिटिशियंस क्रेडिट खुद ही लेते हैं। द फैक्ट इज जस्ट यूएस रेट साइकिल्स, तो उस वक्त रेट्स उन्होंने बढ़ाए थे टू प्रोटेक्ट देमसेल्व्स। एग्जैक्टली 2006 यूएस स्टार्टेड रेजिंग रेट्स। मैं अब आपको हिस्ट्री तक, इट्स इजियर टू मैप दैट वन। डॉलर स्टार्टेड गेटिंग स्ट्रॉन्गर, यहाँ पे टेंशन शुरू हो गई, आटे की कीमत ऊपर नीचे हो रही है, चीनी की कीमत, इट क्रिएट्स इंस्टेबिलिटी। और राइवल पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज स्टार्ट टेकिंग एडवांटेज ऑफ दैट, मूवमेंट शुरू हो जाती है आपकी। और फिर US started cutting rates in 2007 and हमारी 2008 में इलेक्शन हो गए अर्ली, और स्टेबिलिटी सेकेंड हाफ में शुरू हो गई, और वो स्टेबिलिटी रन की टिल 2016 बिकॉज दैट्स एग्जैक्टली 15 में US ने ग्रेजुअली रेट्स आहिस्ता आहिस्ता ऊपर करना शुरू किए थे।
So basically everything really
और
happened in the
17 में
US.
उन्होंने यूं करके स्पीड से रिलेटिवली स्पीड से किए थे, नॉट लाइक दिस वन। एंड हमारी अगेन economic condition, currency started devaluing, and 18 में we had elections, but then we had a black swan event of the pandemic. तो वहाँ से they printed and then they again raised rates, फिर हम unstable हो गए। तो ये cycle इसलिए भी quicker है because जो US वाला economic system है उसमें भी अब instability आ गई है। We've been in one system since 1980, I would say till 2020, and that was a pretty easy system to understand. There was a financial world, there were general rules, regulations, उसके अंदर you were trading and you had less volatility. आपको ये नहीं फिक्र थी कि रशिया कोई अटैक कर देगा कहीं पे, या चाइना के साथ कोई छोटी मोटी चीज़ें हो रही थी, but not big ones. So you could trade as a quantitative person, do an analysis on a spreadsheet and make good returns. After 2020 we have geopolitics. At this point things are very different, but for Pakistan, in my opinion, once we get through this cycle, just like in 1998 to 2007,
There's a killing to be made.
2009 to
16,
2016,
Yeah.
and then बीच में एक और भी spike आया था, but वो money printing से आया था। And then now I think probably 2020, ये थोड़ा सा लंबा cycle है because even US ने 5% rates पे ले गए।
So you're looking at 2025?
I think it takes us Q3 of 2024
ठीक है,
to sometime in 2025.
ठीक है। अच्छा, हमने बहुत ज़्यादा टाइम आपका ले लिया, so I want to do this. I actually have a lot of last questions that I want to ask you. So what I'm going to do is just give me yes or no quick answers, okay? Then I'll also ask you which 5 things you should invest in. Okay, what crypto should you buy right now? One.
This cycle, well, right now I don't believe the bottom is in. I'm in the minority camp.
Okay.
Because जब markets US में crash करेंगी, तो सारी चीज़ें नीचे आती हैं। गोल्ड नीचे आता है, बिटकॉइन नीचे आता है, स्टॉक्स नीचे आते हैं। बट दिस साइकिल आई एम अ लिटिल बिट मोर केयरफुल। आई थिंक थोड़ी सी ऑल्ट कॉइन्स जो हैं उनकी एक रेकनिंग होगी बिकॉज रेगुलेशन इज गोइंग टू कम। सो आई वुड गो टू बिटकॉइन दिस साइकिल एंड इथेरियम।
Okay. Would you buy real estate in Pakistan?
Yes, now is a great time to buy it.
Really? You think the market will go up from here? It's quite high.
In 3 to 5 years, you would again start to see the strong returns
Okay.
in real estate.
Okay.
Remember, there's regulation that's at play. A source of funds, all these things, जो ये IMF and OECD Common Reporting Standards and FATF push कर रहा है, तो थोड़ी सी उसकी वजह से डाउन हुई, थोड़ी सी obviously economic situation की वजह से।
And you don't think the dollar is worth buying right now? बहुत सारे लोग खरीद रहे हैं कि 450 पे जाएगा।
I mean, it's a hedge, right? I mean, but if you're converting everything to dollars at the tail end of the peak dollar, I mean, अगले साल, I mean, for example, I can tell you, rupee ka I can't tell because of the larger instability. I do think we're at the tail end of our devaluation, like 300, 315, like ये range bound होगा।
तो आपको नहीं लगता 450, 600,
I mean,
700?
if we default, तो फिर तो you're looking at 150% devaluation again, right? Not 150, you're looking at basically 300 पे इस वक्त trade कर रहे हैं, ballpark like 285 300 range में। It might go to 450, 500.
Okay.
And then you look at Sri Lanka. Theirs went to 375, came back slightly, stabilized there, and now they're past that period and the economy is upticking actually. So I don't think we default.
Okay. Would you start a startup in 2023 in Pakistan?
Yes, if you have a highly scalable model that requires little funding, and if you can do one round and last for 12 years.
One round, लेकिन rounds देने वाले ही नहीं है, तो round किसे
नहीं दे रहे हैं। हमने invest, we've invested. I know Indus Valley is investing, Sarmayakar is investing,
You're still investing this year?
Yeah, I've done I'm on my third deal this year.
Okay.
But being very selective on smart models.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, this is a time to invest in in good companies.
One startup you wish you would invested in Pakistan that you didn't invest in, you missed out on.
I feel like I've obviously done all
Got
the
the
good
good
startups.
ones, yeah.
Maybe one that I like. I like the team a lot. Is called SafePay.
Okay.
They're interesting. I have NayaPay. I think NayaPay is a great one, but SafePay की team तेज है.
Okay. Now, if I'm, give you my money, all my money, what would you do with it? Acha, would you invest in the Pakistani Stock Exchange? That's also a question I had.
Yeah, if you have a long-term view.
What stocks would you buy?
versus having cash.
ठीक है.
Right? To be honest, I don't invest in Pakistani because I'm already so exposed stock exchange because I'm already so exposed to Pakistan from investing in tech. तो मैंने अपने आप को diversify किया हुआ है.
In the US.
In the US.
What's one stock I would buy in the US? On Robinhood or something.
Well, I mean, now's not the time to build. At least my speculative. This is not financial advice. I think जब bottom of the market आएगी, जब ये Fed cut करेगा उसके 3 से 6 महीने. You can't time it, but like जब Fed cut करेगा, वो इसलिए नहीं cut करे because they want to. US Fed is their central bank, right? वो इसलिए कट करें because कोई धमाका बोला. अभी तो छोटे छोटे बोल रहे हैं. पहले FTX बोला, फिर Silicon Valley Bank, along with a few others, regionals, then First Republic. अभी तो उनकी mortgage, commercial mortgage जो है, वो उधर defaults होंगी.
ठीक है.
Because so much borrowing had been done. So there's going to be some major issues later on this year in the US economy and the global economy. By the way, so I will buy at that time and I'll buy big tech. And I'll buy, I mean, I like big tech, so I'm going to go into big tech because I think that they will be very dominant. And that's your Facebook and your, Innovation Google and Alphabet and Microsoft. They own a 49% stake in ChatGPT. Right? So I mean,
they have the future.
I mean, it's now going to be called, I think, X Corp, जो Elon Musk की है. With Tesla, SpaceX, everything in it, right?
Everything is in one.
Yeah, he's bringing like Alphabet, right?
Yeah, makes sense.
He's creating X Corp and Twitter, by the way. So all that, and so yeah, that's that. But remember, when they do cut, it's very bullish for frontier markets. Pakistan's a frontier market, and emerging markets like India. India, I can't invest in India, but India, I'm very bullish. And India is going to rise this cycle when the US cuts, like the way China rose in 2000. It's just all you have to earmark is कि उनके elections भी हैं, तो वो instability आएगी. लेकिन अगर आप long term horizon पे कर रहे हैं, तो वो उनकी growth बहुत strong है.
ठीक है. And what, last question, I give you all my money. What's the 3 things that you would put it in right now?
So
say I give you 2 साल 3 साल का चलो window है, क्या करूँ अपनी savings के साथ?
I mean, पाकिस्तान में सबसे बड़ा क्वेश्चन है कि आपका पाकिस्तान में जो पैसे रुपीस,
I'm losing rupees every day.
You can't go.
और कल जिस तरह मैं आपको बता रहा था, कितने लोगों को मैं जानता हूँ जिन्होंने डॉलर खरीदा, अब डॉलर गिर रहा है, so they're panic. What do I do with my rupees?
I would buy Pakistani stocks. There's lots of interesting companies like Atak Oil and all these companies. They're going to have value.
And I've heard IT companies are doing really well as well, systems, etc.
Exactly. Look, I mean, right now the liquidity is low. There's only one way to go up in the long term, right? It's not like these companies are going to disappear. Right?
ठीक है.
So some may, but most will survive. So that's one element. I would buy real estate in residential real estate in urban Pakistan, especially Karachi and Lahore, because it's suppressed. वहाँ buyers ही नहीं है, right? I like versus going for the big plots. Like if investment, रहने के लिए अलग होता है, but investment, I would go for the 5 marlas and the 10 marlas in developed societies, like in DHA or like ये जो आपकी what's it, Lakeview, or in Karachi also, like the new DHA city and Bahria, because these are like the New York cities of Punjab is 110 million people. The first guy in Gujranwala that makes 2 crores moves his family to Lahore for better schooling of the children, right? So from that, and same thing playing out in Karachi, and so and we're a big country. So I would go into Pakistani real estate. I would buy on a 10-year bet some level of gold as a 1%. So let's say you're investing 1 crore. I would buy like at least like like 1% of that or 2% of that, put it in gold as well. If crypto were legal, I would have actually advised you to put like 10% in Bitcoin. Okay. Because I think we're at that geopolitical.
Assuming it's legal, should I put it in crypto?
I think like usually 2 to 3% would be like if you're a conservative person. Given the cycle and you have a 10-year view and you can handle the volatility, because वो आपको actually दुनिया की heartbeat दिखा रहा है. बाकी currencies जो stable लग रही है वो उनकी stress को दिखा रहा है. तो I mean, you're gonna. I believe Bitcoin is $250,000 in 10 years. I'm not like Balaji की 6 महीने में मिलियन का हो जाएगा, but 10 years में what's because US ने दोबारा प्रिंट करना है. जब वो प्रिंट करेंगे, मैं डॉलर्स में मेजर कर रहा हूँ, तो उसकी पर्सिंग पावर evaporate होगी. Just like when we print, रुपये devalue होता है. तो yeah, this is it. Real estate, stocks, and yeah.
I'm gonna make my Binance होता है क्या?
Oh, sorry, I forgot. Short term में अगर आपने डालने हैं, तो थोड़ा सा I would pick up the Pakistani Treasury because you're not going to see at least for 1 year. Like Treasury, I mean 20% rate is pretty good, right? So आपका short term capital है जो जिसकी नीड आपको साल बाद है.
बिल्कुल, जिस तरह हमने मिज़ान बैंक म्यूचुअल फंड में डाले हुए हैं, then you can take it out overnight. Yeah, exactly. That makes sense. Chayan, thank you so much for being on the podcast. This was really insightful. Thank you guys for watching. If you enjoy our content, please do subscribe to our channel, and we will see you for the next podcast.